I'm Tiffany. Welcome to Towering TBR. I had a superb reading month in May. I didn't read quite as many things as normal because I got obsessed with Eurovision. Did you watch, and who were your favorites? Share down below. But the quality of the books that I finished were amazing, and with the exception of my DNF, I enjoyed everything I read this month. I had 3 5-stars and a new favorite of the year.
So exciting!
So I don't think I could have asked for better. I read quite widely, so click on the timestamps to find the books you're most interested in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, that way you can catch all of my bookish videos. I'll start with my DNF. If you saw my goals, you'll know that it was a goal for me to finally tackle Moby Dick. But I guess I was defeated by that white whale. I mean, is that how it ends? I don't know. I didn't finish the book. I got 145 pages in, and I liked the writing. It was very descriptive. But the character, in my opinion, was quite annoying, and it was very slow and dense. And I found myself just dreading picking it up. So I thought, I'm going to cut my losses. I'm done with this. So, all right, on to all of the books I did enjoy. At the lowest ranking, I gave a 3.5 star to The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I definitely enjoyed this, but not quite as much as his previous books. The book opens up in a post-apocalyptic setting where a mysterious fog has killed most of humanity. And on this island, we have a small remnant left. And they have defenses against the fog, which keep them safe. However, a scientist ends up murdered, and the defenses come down. And so we have just a few days in order for them to figure out who killed the scientist and how to put back the defenses. I thought this would be a bit more thriller because of that time frame, but I definitely think it was more slower paced, more mystery than thriller. The only problem with trying to solve this murder is that everybody's memories have been erased, and they don't know what they did the night that the person was murdered. That makes also interviewing suspects quite difficult as well. There were quite a few twists in this, a couple I saw coming and some that really surprised me. I enjoyed the overall themes about what it is to be a human and how we can be better, and I would definitely recommend, but just know it's not quite as fast-paced as his other 2 books. The other 3.5 star was The Night Watch by Sarah Waters. This is probably my least favorite Sarah Waters book, which is saying quite a lot. I just had really high expectations for this. And while I still enjoyed it, it's not as good as some of the others I've read. So this opens up with a non-linear time frame. So we are focused on 4 characters in the year 1947. And there's a lot of what their life looks like now, but we don't really know what happened to get them into that point. So eventually it jumps back to an earlier time frame, and we get to learn basically some of the causes that we saw the effects in the later timeline, and then we jump back even further. I didn't really like the nonlinear time structure for 2 reasons. First is when we had characters who were in peril in the earlier timelines, it didn't have as much tension because I'm like, well, I know they're going to make it because I've seen them in 1947. So that definitely lost some of the tension in my opinion. The other thing is when we go back to those scenes to figure out what was the cause of what was happening to the characters, she still didn't completely fill it out. There's still some mystery and guesswork. I think this will be better on a reread. I feel like there are probably a lot more things that I didn't pick up on until later in the book, and I will reread it. But if you're new to Sarah Waters, I wouldn't recommend starting with this one. I picked up Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I've been seeing this hyped on BookTube a lot of places. So this is about a coven of witches, and they are somewhat estranged. But they come together because they encounter a very powerful kid who cannot control their magic and could very well be a threat. Their magic manifests in different ways. I liked learning about that. And there are some witches that have more than one type of magic, which I found intriguing. I will say, throughout most of the book, I was going to give it a 3 star. It was it was fine. It was enjoyable. I was liking the characters. But those last 50 pages and that cliffhanger, like, this feels like a lot of setup for the later 2 books. But, like, now that I have the cliffhanger, I'm like, I have to have the second book. I need to pick it up because I want to see how the actions at the very end of the book will play out in the rest of the trilogy. I really enjoyed this, and I'm hoping to pick up the second one in June. Speaking of trilogies, I picked up Strange World Travel Agency, The Edge of the Ocean. This is book 2 in the Strange World Travel Agency middle grade series. In the first book, we meet Flick, who finds out that she can see magic, and she stumbles across a travel agency. The travel agency has portals through different suitcases, and they visit different worlds. In this second book, they get a call for help in one of the portal lands, and they have to go and help the people. This world is a flat ocean land with like a few islands. The edges are crumbling and the world is getting smaller, and they have to figure out what is going on and how they can keep these people safe. Really fun. It's really fast paced. There are pirates. There was even a little bit of tongue in cheek about the whole like flat earth type thing. I think they were kind of maybe poking fun with the flat ocean land. I really enjoyed this and hope to finish this trilogy very soon. I had a really hard time reading Friday Black because this is a collection of short stories. And the first short story I would rate a 6 out of 5. It was amazing. It was called The Finkelstein Five, and it was about a white man killing 5 black children and then him using a self-defense. It was actually more realistic than dystopian, unfortunately, but it was incredibly powerful, and I would recommend you read it even if you're not interested in the other stories. There were some really great stories in here. I really liked The Era, Zimmerland, and Through the Flash. Zimmerland was like a racist Westworld type story where people could sign up to murder black people, essentially. I'm thinking the author probably picked Zimmerland as a nod to George Zimmerman, who was a man who killed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin and was later acquitted. There was one story in here that I really didn't like, and I wish it was just not in there because it just didn't seem to fit. Most of the themes are about racism and anti-capitalism. I love Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah's writing. I also read Chain Gang All-Stars last year and absolutely loved it. So he has become an auto-buy author for me. If he puts out another book, I'm going to snatch it up. He's such a powerful writer. All right, we are in 5-star territory now. So I reread The Blood of Flowers by Anita Amerezzvani. I read this book about 15 years ago and absolutely loved it. It's been on my favorites shelf ever since. However, I had never listened to the audiobook before, and it is narrated by Shohreh Aghdashloo. So if you don't recognize that name, you might recognize her picture. She plays Avasarala in the Expanse TV show. She is from Iran and has a beautiful Iranian accent that really helps immerse you in the setting. We are following a unnamed 15-year-old girl whose life quickly changes after her father dies. She and her mother are taken in by distant relatives who really don't want them around and do not treat them well. She is an aspiring rug maker, and there are lots of stories and parables weaved throughout that really just create this very immersed tapestry of setting. It is atmospheric, the writing is gorgeous, and I think she has another book. Why have I not picked it up? Because I absolutely love this. Would definitely recommend. The last 2 books were books I read for the Spoonies Readathon, hosted by Emily over at Novelle Novels. I'll link her and the announcement in the description below. The first book I read was Keedie by Elle McNicoll. I buddy read this with Chattie. She and I read A Kind of Spark by the same author last year and loved it. And this is a prequel to that. We follow 13-year-old autistic Keedie. She has to battle bullies, navigate complex sibling relationships, and figure out who she is. While this was a tad unrealistic at times, especially in confronting bullies, I felt like this had really important messages and themes. She is a complex and layered character who chooses to stand up for the vulnerable. I'm going to quote a metaphor that she said because I found it incredibly impactful. Humans can poke and prod a shark as much as they want, but the minute that shark strikes back, game over. Suddenly, it's a monster, just like they always tried to say it was. This was just powerful and illuminating, and I would highly recommend if you would like to read a book about an autistic character written by an autistic author. And now to nonfiction and the best book I've read this year, which is Disability Intimacy, edited by Alice Wong. This was my most anticipated book of the year, and it absolutely didn't disappoint. I loved this. I loved it so much, I'm going to do a single review because there are so many quotes and aspects that I want to share. So I only read like a few essays each night because I wanted to have time to sit and think and process them. And that was definitely good. This is not a book that you want to just rush through. They discuss that intimacy is not always sexual, and there are a variety of ways for people to have intimacy. It also covers a wide range of disabilities, identities, and ethnic groups. There were 2 authors in here that I had read before, T. Franklin and Ashley Shue. Ashley Shue wrote Against Techno-Ableism, which I rated 5 stars earlier this year. I will link to that video. And T. Franklin, who is the creator of the comic Bingo Love, I also gave that 5 stars. So Ashley's essay is about creating intimacy with sexual partners in order to feel comfortable enough to take off her prosthetic leg. I found that incredibly interesting and an aspect that I didn't know anything about. And T. Franklin writes about how they were drawn to sex work as a way to have kind of flexible hours because they deal with chronic pain and fatigue and can't work a regular schedule. So I found both of those really interesting. The other essays focused on getting care work during the pandemic, seeking intimacy through digital means via Zoom or email or message boards. They talked about eugenics through IVF and through MAID. MAID is a Canadian acronym that stands for Medically Assisted in Death. There were animal companions. There was dating difficulties due to ingrained ableism and knowing that it's a deal breaker for a lot of people. And the intimacy that a disabled person feels when they can absolutely be 100% themselves and be accepted by the Spoonie community. There's even more than that, but that's why I'm going to do a whole video, because there are just so many things that I want to talk about that were included in this book. While I definitely related to this, and other disabled people will as well, I highly encourage able-bodied people to read this as well, because it really gives you valuable insight on what day-to-day lives can look like and what things might be challenging that you hadn't considered before. Disability support varies quite a lot, and I learned a ton. There was so much in here that I found interesting and fascinating. I really hope I've inspired you to pick this up because it is amazing. Look out for my single review. When that's up, I will link it here, and that way we can discuss it in more depth and with some quotes. So those were the 8 books I read in the month of May. It was a phenomenal reading month. How did your May go? What was the best book you read? Do you think you're going to pick up any of the books I talked about? Let's have a chat down in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.